you so much for being here. And so yeah, I'll tell a little bit my story, which is, you know, when you found this company, these endeavors, it's a story of, you know, at the very beginning, the story of like why the co-founders want to do this, and you know, it's incredible how to start a company and then start realizing why you start something. So for me, really, the story that I'm telling it's kind of fresh in a way that it is the way that I am representing my own frustrations into down the journey into why, and understanding why I started something. So you start a company because, okay, like, you know, it was the middle of the pandemic and we wanted to do something, and then you start connecting the dots and realizing, oh my God, like, this is why I do this. My story is, I'm Chilean, like some of you here. I'm an engineer. I study electrical engineering, and you know, I had I don't know if many engineers here have this thing, but you know, it was hard for me to, like, you know, understand human beings. I was a single child, son of a single mom on top of things, so it was very hard for me to kind of, I don't know, socialize. I enjoy a lot talking to adults when I was a kid, and understanding the space or dinosaurs or whatever, you know, the new obsession was when I was a kid, and decided to study engineering because, I don't know, I could deal good with math and it was easy for me. And so I kind of came here to Stanford to study. I did an MBA and took a bunch of classes, and because I had a good background of engineering, my, you know, kind of like I could build machines, right? Like it's kind of the similar thing that you're doing when you're a kid. You're playing games with Legos, and this is kind of for me the same thing. I don't think myself as an entrepreneur in the sense that I thought that I was going to start a company. I, in fact, before coming to Stanford, applied to PhDs in physics and were accepted at very good universities, and I always thought myself of being in the academia. However, it's an environment that, like, I didn't like. I felt it was competitive and stressful for me, so I started working in the business and worked in a hedge fund and came to Stanford. And when I was at Stanford, I got a really good offer to go back to Chile to be partnering like another hedge fund. Turns out I'm good at that hedge fund team, or I was good at that, like an axe or things like that. And I got this like incredible offer. Like, in fact, it was the best offer of my class in terms of like economics. And I told my wife, hey, I got this offer, and for some reason I didn't talk to her about this, and she says, there's no way you're gonna go back to work with that guy, because he's not a good person. Like, you know, I don't think this is gonna be good for you. And I'm like, well, but I don't have any job. Like, all my classmates line up like job interviews and everything, and I have no jobs. And we're here in the US. I'm gonna lose my visa, so like I have this job. Like, no, I think we should stay here for 5 years. And it's my wife. It's kind of hard to say. So yeah, more of you guys know. And so like here I was. I had an OPT, which is like an optional practical training for 1 year, and no job, and didn't know what to do. So like, you know, after graduation, I was like hanging in my home, learning databases and how to program. Like many of you guys, you know, are learning programming languages. I had a very good engineering background, but I didn't know anything else. And I had a friend who became very close at the GSP, who was building a game. And so like I said, hey, can you give me a job for nothing, for free, and I'll work for you. And you know, I'll probably gonna learn a thing or two because I have nothing else to do. That's really the story. It's like not that I wanted to start a company, I just didn't have a job. And well, that story is Tapjoy, and what started was an incredible story. I mean, it's still an incredible story. What started as one game that we launched in the App Store became number one app on the App Store. This is 2008, so you can imagine like eras ago. And we were making something like $1,000 per day in advertising. So like kind of, because it's number one in the App Store. And at that time, the App Store didn't have rankings, nothing. There was no technologies like the most downloaded app would be number one, and there was no way to kind of like incentivize that ranking either. So we built another game, and so this game is called Tap Defense. You can see it on the web. It was kind of a cool. Maybe somebody played it. It was like a capture the flag game. Because I love capture the flag games. And then the second game was called Topsort. So it had no, we launched it. It was more expensive to build than the other one. And we launched it, we were very excited, and zero downloads. No one downloaded the game. And we were like very frustrated. And one day we had this idea of, okay, why don't we use the other game to kind of bump the other game. So we made a modification on that defense that you could like skip a bunch of levels if you download this other game. And we kind of launched the script. We were very nervous. I went to bed. The next day we wake up and we have 5,000 downloads for the second game. So that's how Topsort was founded. Topsort today is part of IronSource. So IronSource is part of Unity. Is the largest gaming advertising publisher in the world. And like it's powered by that, and we kind of like exploited that thing of like helping other developers like kind of like get their games, because at that time the App Store had no sponsor listings. And yeah, I think we kind of embedded app installs. And yeah, there's lots of stories there. We have one day like a developer coming and saying, oh, I have this thing that shows a status called WhatsApp, can I sponsor it? Turns out it's cool, right? So kind of like those were the days. And then that's how I got into ads. That's really the reason. It's not like, oh, I was excited about tech. It's just that it was just for the accident of like building a game and trying to monetize another one. And the company was sold to Overpal in 2010. And after that, I kind of started playing with same problem of advertising, thinking, well, there's this world of the internet online, and then there's like all these local businesses that don't have the internet, or they want to move eyeballs that are online to local businesses. So I bought like a point of sale, like a POS, and we hacked the point of sale to see if we could track a credit card, some part of the credit card. So like you put your credit card online, and then you go use that same credit card offline, and like you can say, oh, like this person who saw something online went to the store. So we built a technology, it's a company called Zaply, and that company like got deals with like very big acquiring banks like First Data, Golden Retriever, Chase Payment Tech, and I can tell you one day about the stories of how we got those deals, but it involved me camping behind like on the buildings, and like kind of like trying to intercept the person who was the decision maker and like tell them, oh, can we talk? But we successfully got those deals, and we built the first system, online to offline system that I didn't know in the world that could track a part of the credit card online and like confirm that was the same credit card on the merchant, and like do attribution online offline. And at that time, there was this company that was just launched called Groupon. It was not very well known, but they were in the same space. Like they were essentially trying to innovate with local businesses. And I meet this like amazing guy from Chicago called Andrew Mason, who maybe some of you know, but this like was a complete character of entrepreneurship and someone that I learned so much. And he said, why don't you come work with us? So Groupon acquired my company in 2011. And even some people that are here in the work there, I think Seda is around, and we kind of, it was just an incredible thing. We had a team in Chile, and they like essentially relocated them all here in the US. Some of those folks went and started companies. One of them started Wildlife, which is like the largest publisher in one of the fifth largest publisher in the world in mobile games, and a Brazilian company, it's a pride of Brazil. Another one started Copilot, which is like a mid disruptor. Another one started Game Time, which is like the events company. So all of those people came from this like kind of like Saturday story. Booms or something. So yeah, and yeah, so like at Groupon, I think I cut my teeth on building engineering. I have the luck of running the local business, so like all local Groupons and like where was my organization, and that's where like we did a lot of innovations there that like kind of because at that time we were not making a profit, we were growing very fast, but like the business was not very profitable, and so we started thinking, okay, what are the things that are going to make this money? So like one would be dynamic pricing, another sort of like essentially kind of like understand supply and demand and price the Groupon accordingly. Another one was like it was very hard for merchants to get a Groupon. Like it would be, we would use 12 touch points of human beings to like from beginning to like launch your Groupon, and we completely automated that. It was a huge process. So from having 50,000 merchants after self-service, we started having like 1 million, so like kind of like a big scale. We built the payments, so like back then we had a payment services, like kind of like we built all of that. You could accept credit cards on point of sale, similar to what Square does. And like we built an entire problem, so we had a lot of data as well. At that time it was 65 million different locations. And we essentially built an entire team to reduplicate that data and clean it. So that clean data then we could use for like for showing the Groupon, and like worked a lot around that problem. In fact, in my opinion, the hardest engineering problem in all of those was the merchant data problem. So that's where we had the biggest team. Even when it was not the one that had the biggest impact on product, it was really the core of everything, like how we clean this data and how we can make it accessible. And so, like, and in general, so that was my story, and that's kind of like, until 2015, like, the story of my career. Like, ended up being an entrepreneur, still being an entrepreneur, never wanted to be an entrepreneur, but like, I'm not the boss of my house. So, but certainly, and then I have a parallel story, which is I come from a family of retail as well. And my family has they participate in a retailer, and then this retailer, like a while I was like being in Silicon Valley, like kind of like building all these things, understanding experimentation frameworks, dynamic pricing, and this. Back at home in Chile, the company where my family is involved, who's a kind of a very successful company, started losing their edge in technology against the big retailers, big marketplaces. So, and they really tried extremely hard to like solve this problem. So one, like most retailers, like they felt that Amazon was coming, so that's the kind of like always feeling of like, oh my God, this is like this eye of Sauron that is gonna come and like kind of like essentially get us bankrupt. So they had that feeling, and then just like thinking, okay, how can we change this? How can we do something? How can we change management, digital transformation, all of things. Exceptionally good at managing merchandising, exceptionally good at branding, exceptionally good at like buying supply, this retailer, but like not having the ability to understand technology. And thinking that understanding technology is making internal changes, where in my opinion, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So, so like essentially my learning from so these slides were not generated by AI, but like I need to take a look at them. The problem is that the entire business of retail changed completely in very little time, and like essentially a lot of the problems around especially the relationship with the user and the interaction with the user went digital. And logistics became like also a different problem. And like being good at retail, being good at like, kind of like a lot of the problems that you need to solve to build your business don't necessarily translate into like what's the new game. And let me explain why. Like, you can't, I believe, so like there's a retailer, I'm not gonna mention names, but spend $800 million a year in engineering. $800 million, I cannot understand the dimension of that. A year built like this entire engineering organization, but they didn't disrupt, like even when you're spending a lot of money in engineering, if you don't know what you need to solve or what you need to disrupt, it's really money going to the garbage. So $800 million, what did they end up doing? Reinventing the wheel, building their own search, building their own, even their own OpenSSL. I mean, that level of craziness, like even the encryption certification systems of libraries that are open source, they build it because, oh, everything needs to be in-house. So really disruption, like in my opinion, has nothing to do with that. It really has to do to rethinking the whole thing again from scratch. Like for me, the problem is if you're trying to optimize something that is already broken, you just like are gonna make the problem worse. So like really kind of the type of talent that you need to do innovations in certain things of technology, not all of them, but some of them, really require certain type of people that it's going to be very hard to find in your organization. Because you need to make really crazy counterfactual assumptions, and you need to really feel like you have a blank open slate to make those decisions. And so, like it really requires disruption, and disruption requires destruction. It requires cleaning down. It requires understanding where things break, and like kind of like building that foundation. That's kind of like what people call the, I mean, it's not necessarily here, but it's like a little bit of a mindset that like you see in this place about, and why like a lot of the times many founders are actually very young and have a lot of, they're not even aware, and if they were aware, they might have not made the decisions. They're not even aware of what they're disrupting. So like normally, we were talking yesterday with Bobby, he kind of had the choice, the luxury of working with Clayton Christensen, and rest in peace, but an amazing innovator. And really, he talks about the fact that like outsiders in general are the ones who create disruption because they're not really understanding what they're disrupting. So this is like a very important thing to understand. It's very hard to think that you can change something that where you're standing on an old game and try to disrupt that game from inside. It's just a hard problem. And you might make decisions that could be like crazy, like spending $800 million in capex and get nothing. So, like it was like we were like that. We didn't know where we were getting in. We found a super fun problem. Personally, I started this company because I love the auto-eating problem. It's a control problem and an electrical engineer. Mike really liked the idea because he kind of was tired of advising these very big companies making the same mistakes. And Regina wanted to start this company because she was very frustrated with how complex advertising systems were. That's the foundation of the company. It was more than that. I said, okay, let's build something, not knowing where we were getting into. Obviously, we saw kind of like, oh, there's an interesting market, but we really didn't know what we were doing at the beginning. And I think that was an edge for us on thinking, okay, I don't know nothing about tech. I think we spent the first 2 years hearing people telling us the word DSP and SSP, and we like nodding because we were selling the product and not understanding what they're saying. And I think it took us like probably 2 years to understand, this DSP and SSP is this. So like we knew nothing about that. And so like, I think that like we accidentally started building something that like, is what makes sense to us. Like, with the engineers who will talk to customers. We understood option theory very well, and like kind of like it's really what Topsort was started. So okay, so what's Topsort? I mean, obviously most of you know, but like we try to remove the complexity that's kind of like a lot of the mission. It's like, so that like there is an ecosystem where retailers and vendors like kind of like win. That's kind of the idea. And sometimes we make some of those decisions controversial to remove that complexity. So like, I'm sure we've been in sales like where I would like kind of like say, oh, keywords are not very good. Why do we do it this way? And like at the beginning it was painful because we will lose deals because we will keep pitching. Okay, we think this is the way to do this thing. And people say, yeah, but you don't have this feature, this app. I think we've learned with time, and like we've become like better at that. But like we were very kind of like very kind of focused on thinking on what was the way. And so like kind of like what our mission is like remove the complexity, making the vendors make it easy for them to kind of like create a campaign, and for retailers like giving them a foundation that like use this technology to kind of like give them more power to kind of like be better at what a lot of them are and focus on those things. Toby said yesterday, it is true, like if the CEO of a company is optimizing ads as a #1 priority, like I don't know if it's a good idea to invest in that company. And so yeah, like that's kind of like we really think advertising systems require a lot of technology and foundation and thinking that is disruptive, that will be controversial, that will be hard to explain, and that like essentially you can package that into a lever of technology. So like and yeah, I don't know. This is an example. Obviously, like it's not that they don't lack a vision. I think it's like it's the lack of tools. A marketplace is a tool. Like Alvin told us 2 days ago. It is not the ability to do things, but like having access to certain things that help you build advertising. And yeah, like here you have a vendor who has like that nice kind of like thing for cats to be very, cats are, I guess. And then you can essentially sponsor your product. You guys know what we do. So we really consider ourselves the wrong tool of big tech. That's kind of, I think, a very important thing. It's like we literally hire people here. I came from this experience from Groupon building relevant systems. We have people from other big tech companies, like you saw ours, like Zeta there, from places there. And we literally try to write that technology and like, kind of like make it available. And it really is a lever. Technology is not a competitive, it turns to be a competitive advantage, but it's not a competitive advantage that you need to develop in-house. And in fact, if you develop in-house, you might make a terrible mistake because it distracts you from what you should be kind of like, really taking care, which is like really your customer. But you can provide a lever. The future we believe in. Why we do this? Like, why are we being a Robin Hood? Why are we trying to benefit? Why are we trying to empower retailers? It's because, and I think it's very intuitive, it's because a world that is more diverse, a world that is a bazaar, that has more options, not only benefits more retailers, but it benefits the customer as well. So I personally don't believe in a world where there's only Amazon and maybe, and like that's it. I really believe in a world where like, retailers like have, their own audience, they have their own choices, and they can compete just as in the bazaar. People compete and kind of like offer their products. It makes the world more richer, more kind of, I don't know, I maybe I'm nostalgic, but that's kind of like, and I think that like companies get started not only with the mission of making money, but with the mission of changing something. So like if I can tell my kids, oh, your dad helped like building this, and like the world is more colorful, and like we're providing you a future where more people like kind of have choices. Like I think I will be very happy with what we built, and so that's why we're here. And yeah, like, that's it. Like we're really excited about like tackling the hard challenge. How we can build a better protocol, how we can essentially kind of empower marketplaces, retailers with technology, how we can play a role there on like building an ecosystem with like our origins, which is engineering. Like, you know, that's kind of like what we're good at. Like, we don't claim to be good at other things, but in those, we really think we have a badass team. So yeah, that's the story, and like, you know, thank you so much for this.